Welcome to the Dive Into Reiki podcast. It's so nice to be back. I took a break, I think it was from April or May, just to recharge. And I'm coming back to end the year with a series of short episodes. And there is no interview, it's just to share with you my experience traveling 2 weeks in Japan to do something called the Shikoku Pilgrimage. That is one of the few very active pilgrimages left in the world. And it's an island called Shikoku in the south of Japan. And there are 88 temples you can visit in order. I didn't do 88. But it was a beautiful experience, a little bit different than what I expected. I think when we're Reiki practitioners and teachers and we travel to Japan, we expect these huge experiences, or perhaps I went to a fire ceremony that something very magical will happen, even though I'm always saying that Reiki is very human and all of that. And I got so much out of this trip, but probably nothing I expected. Everything I needed and more. It was really a beautiful, deeply moving trip. So I'm going to be sharing this in many episodes. And the reason why is because there were three very clear areas that I got the learning and that I observed Japanese society. And it's three areas that I think also very relevant for Reiki, which are cleansing, community, and joy. But before we get into this trip to Japan, which is my second trip, I would love to give you a little bit of background on myself. If you don't know my story, a lot of you may know, but I'm just going to go over a few facts that also make you understand a little bit the context through which I see things. And then also what the Shikoku Pilgrimage is, what Shingon Buddhism is, and a little bit of some of the influence on Reiki, although they haven't demonstrated historically Shingon has any influence in Reiki. But again, being part of the tradition and the country, and also being, a lineage of Buddhism, there is always some very great inspiration for Reiki practice, as in any Japanese spiritual practice or martial art. So a little bit about me. It's, for those of you who don't know, I was actually born in Brussels, Belgium. My mom is from Spain. My father is Belgian, but he was born in the 30s in India. So he was already a polyglot, and my side of my father's family is very polyglot, and they travel a lot. My mom is from Madrid. We lived in Belgium. I was born in Belgium. Then they split, and I moved to Venezuela with my Spanish family that was not polyglot or as artsy, and my Belgian family was also into diplomacy and politics and very open-minded and, let's say, a little bit crazy. My Spanish family was way more conservative, very religious, and also very stable, which was also a good thing. So myself, I have those two pillars. I am very adventurous. I love learning new languages, but I also have that very stable, I'm going to have a house and I'm going to work, and I do enjoy actually working. I work in advertising. I actually love working, and I love work and all the craziness that happen at work to fuel my Reiki practice. But the one truth is, when you're born in one country, then you move to another country, which is very different. Belgium is colder, more formal, French-speaking, at least the part I was born in. And then you move to a country that is warm, tropical, fun, laughter. And then that country, most of you must be now aware that Venezuela is not the most peaceful, organized country. That country went a little bit crazy. So I moved to the United States just after I finished university. And a third language, a third culture. I spent 2 years in Miami. I didn't find myself in Miami very well. I took a car and drove to New York when I was 24. Took me 3 days. I came with a friend, a couple of bags, and probably $2,000-$3,000. And that was many years ago. And I found myself in New York. And the reason I'm giving you my background, cultural background, is because there is one thing very Sometimes hard, but also very beautiful, is that I never fully fit in anywhere. I am too warm and too loud, and I move my hands too much. I hug people to be Belgian. I am way too nerdy, on time, organized, and a little bit too Germanic to be Venezuelan. And although I hug and everything, I'm still probably more of a low touch person, which also has to do with my kind of neurodiversity. But by living here, honestly, I found a paradise in terms of work. But sometimes I feel like, in America, everything is great, but my culture is a little bit different. And what I love about New York is that I don't fit in, but so does most people. We're all different. So this city is really good for me. But not fitting in, even though it takes that sense of belonging out, and sense of belonging really gives you safety, did two very good things for me. Not having a sense of belonging and not having, honestly, any family here in New York is probably what drove me into Reiki. And I found a different kind of sense of belonging because, again, dropping a little bit that very separate self, there is a sense of belonging with everything in the universe, even though in my very non-advanced stage. But there is a sense of kinship with everyone who surrounds me in this city, with the plants, with the pets. Even I always talk in my podcast about the rats. So not belonging really fueled that search for something deeper, and I'm really grateful for that. But not belonging and being somewhat of an observer, an outsider, also has a great benefit, is that you actually are comfortable being an outsider and just moving anywhere in the world without really worry. I travel for work. If you follow my personal Instagram, you've probably seen it. And I actually love to be left in a country I don't speak the language, I don't know the transportation system, and just figuring things out and learning about other cultures. Because, I love just seeing how they do things differently, trying to understand some of the cultural context, the emotional context. So I that is quite interesting for me. And that's why perhaps also when I approach Japan, I may approach it a little bit more about everyday life in Japan and going to little towns, and also having a lot of conversation will be exaggerating because I speak 30 words of Japanese, but having interactions with people who are local, who actually are not very much in contact to people from the West because they're tiny towns. So I really enjoyed that. And that also has brought me some experience that are a little bit different beyond going to the key Reiki, perhaps places in Japan. So then you understand also, I went to Japan 6 years ago. I went there for 6 weeks. 3 of those weeks, of course, my first time in Japan, I went to Tokyo. I fell in love with Tokyo. I also went to Kyoto. I went to the north, to Sapporo. I was lucky enough to see there the cherry blossoms because I went a little later in the year, in May, but they are still in Sapporo. But I also got to spend 2 weeks discovering Japan by myself, observing how they moved, observing their presence, how they are so present in everyday life, their awareness of the physical space, the way their old architecture really is connected to nature, and a lot of things that were very interesting. I spent then 3 weeks in a Zen monastery in a mountain called Chokai-san, actually in front of Chokai-san, in a town in the middle of nowhere in the northern part of the main island, in a district called Akita. And it was very beautiful. We heard that Mikao Usui spent a few years in a Zen monastery, so that drove my search. And that really transformed my Reiki practice. It wasn't the memorial, it wasn't sites. It was really being 3 weeks there with a Zen monk, sometimes with other people practicing, but a lot of the time by myself, sometimes meditating, sometimes cleaning the zendo, which is that part of the temple where you meditate and live, almost like a monk. But also especially watching the rice fields, the nature, and really understand the nature of Reiki. And I've talked about that in 300 interviews in Reiki Rays and stuff, so I'm not going to go over that again. but there was really a physical, emotional, spiritual understanding of the Reiki Kanji in a different way for me. And again, there is always so much more to discover, but it was really life-changing in terms of practice. So that was 6 years ago. Then the pandemic came, and again, it's not that easy to go to Japan because when you work, you need a couple of weeks. If you go for 5 days, you spend them mostly on a jet lag and you're rushing. So it took us, I say us because I went with a dear friend. It took us quite a long time to plan this, also to get the money. So 5 years ago, this friend decided that when she turned 50, we should go to Japan to celebrate. So we started saving money. She always wanted to have done the Shikoku Pilgrimage. We came out with, she also worked full time, it's New York. So we came out with a realistic time frame of 10 days in Japan plus 3 days of travel and started saving. And that trip that was a fantasy suddenly came true a little over a month ago. We left on October 10th and we came back on October 23. Yeah, it was the 23rd. So the Shikoku Pilgrimage, to now get you a little bit to what we wanted to do, the Shikoku Pilgrimage is actually, and sorry, I was supposed to do the background with the picture of me in my yukata, which is this very more informal kimono that you wear around in the Japanese past, but I skipped it. So let me go to what the Shikoku Pilgrimage is from here. So the Shikoku Pilgrimage, it's a Shingon Buddhist pilgrimage that goes around the island. That island has a lot of mountain in the middle, so it literally goes mostly around. Sometimes you go inside and you visit 88 temples. And let me, before I go deeper into the pilgrimage, tell you what Shingon Buddhism is. I'm gonna not go very deep into it, but just because you understand a little bit the difference and why this pilgrimage also felt different, but also very special versus my stay at the Zen Buddhist monastery. So Shingon Buddhism, it's one of the lineages of Buddhism that is from what they call Mikyo, which is esoteric Buddhism. So they have these secret teachings that are transmitted directly from master to student through an initiation. A lot of these secret teachings are mudras. When I stayed in 2 temples and we did morning prayers. When you see the morning prayers, the monks have very long sleeves, and they actually do the mudras hidden by the sleeve. So I knew from some learning before that those were mudras, but actually if you're seeing the morning prayers as an outsider or even as a member of the Shingon community, the only thing is you will see is probably a hand moving on a sleeve, having no idea what it is. Also, it doesn't move that much. So they have that, and for me, even though it hasn't been proved that Shingon has any influence in Reiki, they believe it's mostly Zen and another lineage called Tendai. And I'm calling them lineage. I don't know if they're lineage or schools, so apologies for that. But for me, it always really like that part about this initiation. They have a spiritual blessing called Kaji that has some coincidence as with Reiki in terms of what points they touch. They clear. It's really about cleansing a lot of your senses so you can see clearly. And again, obviously Japanese culture informed Mikao Sui, so a lot of traditions use, the eyes or the ears or like hands. So it doesn't mean that it came from that, but you can see how culturally, the more you understand the culture, you can start understanding where some of the elements of Reiki practice came and where Mikao Sui, he was inspired just by his daily life. So Shingon Buddhism was founded by a monk called Kōbō Daishi, also known as Kukai. Kukai probably was his original name. And Shingon Buddhism is very old. It was established in the early 9th century after he went to study Vajrayana Buddhism in China, and he brought it to Japan. So when he came to Japan, actually a lot of his activity, because he was born in the island of Shikoku, and that's also a temple that we visited. We visited around 8 or 9 temples. And he started like changing temples to Shingon. And then the pilgrimage started a few hundred years ago, and it became official 1500 years, in the years 1500s, not 1500 years ago. So a lot of the temples I visited, and there are going to be 3 more episodes of the podcast. I will be taking you through the temples and some of the learnings, as well as some of like the experience of our daily living, because we're living like Japanese, living like sleeping in futons, on tatamis. I didn't see a fork in 2 weeks. It was quite interesting. So the central practice of the Shingon Buddhism is basically the use of the 3 mysteries, Sanmitsu. If you have studied with me or been on the Patreon with me, you will have heard about this. Basically, it's the combination of body, mind coming together through speech. In this case, particularly, the body is also expressed as mudras. The ones I mentioned, they do hidden beneath the sleeves. Speech, mantras or sutras that are chanted. There is a lot of chanting in Shingon Buddhism, which in Zen, the core practice is mostly Zazen, which is seated meditation and silent. And then they do some sutra chanting once or twice a day to make sure their energy doesn't get very stale. But in Shingon, chanting is really one of the major expression. And the idea is to really unite with the cosmic Buddha, Dainichi Nyorai, and which is like the main Buddha that is also linked, it's believed, with the Reiki master symbol, the one that it's like not, a lot of them have evolved, but like the most traditional one that some people say was done by Hawayo Takato, other people say is Mikao Sui. There is always that discussion going on, which I'm not going to take sides, but hopefully one day we'll know. There will be some proof and we'll find out who it is. The fact is, it's a beautiful symbol. So obviously these mudras and this chanting help body and mind come together in oneness with Dainichi Nyorai. And another thing to mention here, Dainichi Nyorai, or the cosmic Buddha, comes to earth in different shapes. One of them is the emanation of a king of wisdom called Fudomyo, which also you may have seen if you're a patron of mine or a student of mine, I may have mentioned. He's a blue deity that really has a sword and he's all scary. And, he's here to kind of scare you into enlightenment. They call him like the fiery compassion, and he's very compassionate, but he's also very wise. And then the other one is actually called Canon, which is Guanyin in China, and it's also an evolution of those names from India that I can never pronounce, so I apologize. It starts with Avalalo something. I'm really bad with Sanskrit and Indian and all those names. But it's Guanyin in China and Canon in Japan. And she's the deity of compassion, but of like a more kind compassion. And most of the temples I visited, I cannot say the 88 of them are like that, either have Canon as the main deity and Fudomyo as a psychic, or they have Fudomyo as the main hero center and then Canon as a sidekick. Part of it is, yes, they are both compassionate. One is fiery, the other one is more sweet. But also, you're talking about a king of wisdom, and then the deity of compassion. And in Buddhism, wisdom always should go with compassion. So that was also quite interesting. And if we think as well of the Reiki symbol, the third symbol is really about compassion. It's known as the distant symbol, but it has to do with the heart center, which is that deep, deep compassion that comes from no judgment and knowing that we're all really deeply interconnected. So for me, Canon and Fudo are very special. Canon feels almost like my heart essence. Fudo is the deity I use in martial arts, but also pray a lot to have that sword in hand and cut through those veils of illusion and see clearly. And this is very important. Again, I mentioned those 3 buckets. Cleansing. And cleansing here is very important because it's not cleansing bad vibes. It's not letting go of trauma. It's just literally cleansing illusion and remembering your light. And so one thing that we're going to go later in what the Shikoku Pilgrimage is, but in the 88 temples, in every of them, you're supposed to be able to heal one affliction or affection, worry, grief, lack of patience or whatever. But you're going to see that it's really not about almost cleansing a sin or like, oh, this is bad and now I'm good. It's really about remembering your light so that fades away. So that sword from Fudomyo is really us letting go, remember our light, having the light illuminate our dark sides, and letting those veils that are fueled by anger, by fear, fall down. And so we can see clearly that we're actually interconnected, that we're bright light and all those amazing things. But also to accept that sometimes there is a physical reality and to see things as they are. Okay, so that was very interesting, and hopefully that made sense. If not, please leave a note in the comments. I'm happy to clarify that in episode 2. So again, as I mentioned, they really emphasize chanting sacred sounds and gestures and the image as the expression of ultimate truth. And the other thing that I really loved about Shingon is that the enlightenment is in this life. We already have all this light. It's about remembering, which reminds me a lot of how a lot of us are more and more teaching Reiki. It's like, hey, just remember the light. It's in you. You're already in there. You just need to let go of anger and worry and all these other things, right? So Shingon is very that. And I think also it's very oriented towards spreading this in everyday life with the people who surround you. And I love that, and that's why the second bucket of community came in, and also the third bucket of joy, because I found all the monks, the Shingon monks, except one who was in a bad mood, actually very joyful, very accessible, and I think that was a big lesson. And for at least us as Reiki practitioners, these monks, they have been practicing for 40, 50 years. They chant beautifully. They perform these hidden sacred rites that are very complex. They do healings, which I didn't get to see. But they really are people with incredible energy and incredible light. But they are literally, when they're performing the rite, they're performing the rite. They're completely, there is no way you can distract them. But when they stop, they're just as human as you and I. There is no ego. There is no, I am a healer. They become part of the community. And even when they're performing the rites in Shingon, they're very much community oriented. It's like people go, for example, to these temples for the pilgrimage, and they go with their monk and they chant together. So there is a deep sense of community in Shingon. And obviously part of it is that I saw it more than in Zen. I only was in one Zendo for the Zen studies, but Zen is a little bit more quiet. And it felt, and this may be a completely personal experience, it felt like obviously there is a lot of community, but it didn't feel as the joy of chanting together. Like that was like something very beautiful. And there was also a less forceful chant in Shingon that I observed, again, my very personal experience. I saw them chanting 5 or 6 times. Long chants, but it was very joyful chanting most of the times, but also very strong from the Hara. So the pilgrimage per se, it's, as I mentioned, it's 88 temples, and people walk these sometimes. It's like around 1,200 kilometers, and that probably is around 800 miles, 700 miles, give or take. Some people, again, walk around the island from Temple 1 to 88. We didn't do that. Very few people nowadays do that, unless they're retired and doing the pilgrimage. A lot of elderly Japanese, again, 99% of the people doing the pilgrimage and visiting these islands are actually Japanese. Some other countries from Asia, very few people from the West do this, and there were people actually from Australia. That was the most that we saw. Some people, especially the elderly Japanese, they don't do it all at once. They take like some buses. They come for like sometimes 4 days, 5 days, or a week with their monk. We also came across a group of elderly Japanese. I call them Obachan because that's the That's the word in Japanese, the endearment word for grandma, abuela. So we call them obachans, because also like everywhere we saw more females than males in general. They were also like elderly men. So I'm gonna call them from now on obachan, and forgive me if I'm generalizing very much. But they were like this group of the obachans from Nagoya that they had taken a ferry and then a bus to come to the fire ceremony in a temple that was quite difficult to get there, but obviously they got there through the bus. We had to hike an hour and a half up a mountain. Other people drive. They perhaps, take a weekend flight and drive. Some visitors are from the island. And then there are also people, mostly Westerners, that bike, which is very hard because there is a lot of hills, like it's not flat at all. So it was incredible to see all those different people. We actually didn't follow 1 to 88. We also decided not to do the whole island because we only had after the day we landed 10 full days, and we wanted to make the most of our trip. So we did one half of the island and chose the temple because of transportation. We took mostly trains, a lot of very local, tiny trains. We took local buses, also some buses, they were falling to pieces, but they keep them so clean and beautiful. We took sometimes 3-4 transportation methods, and we will wait in the middle of nowhere, a bus that passed every 4 hours, and just hoping that Google Map was okay. And actually we made it, all of them. Thank God, Japanese, they're very punctual. When they're delayed 2 minutes, they get upset. We saw also some people getting upset because a bus was delayed 2 minutes. So the order we went to, we started with I believe it was number 31, then 36, and we just changed the order. I think once you're gonna get a little bit of our experience in the temple, at least I did when I started, I did this version for my Patreon community, one temple after the other. It was the order that was meant to be. It was very beautiful and perfect for my friend and I. So again, we can do this pilgrimage many ways. We did it in a way that was very ours, and it worked out. I'm dying to go back one day and actually do from 1 to 88 and do just like we did with a tiny backpack, but this time really do all of them and just with buses and walking. I don't think I will ever walk all the way because there is a lot of highway walking. So people go that, and the idea is the pilgrims, they wear a white vest, and they carry a bag and a staff, and some of them carry also a hat. The staff and the hat embody this idea of Kōbō Daishi, walking through the island. I didn't wear any of that. It felt a little bit because I wasn't doing from 1 to 88, and also I'm not a Shingon Buddhist, it just felt a little bit, strange to do that. I just decided to go with my heart and be fully present. I did get a little book, a Japanese book, where every time you go to a temple, they do calligraphy and the seal of the temple. So that is one thing I did, and I have those, as well as some Shinto shrines that gave them to me. But it was quite interesting. But again, foreigners are allowed to do all of that. I'm gonna put in the notes actually all the information about the Shikoku Pilgrimage in English in case you ever want to do it. It also includes the temple practice that everybody did at every temple. So every time you go to a temple, you usually light incense, and it's usually 3 sticks of incense for mind, body, and speech. Obviously, you pray to the deity there, and then they have a temple practice, which is some chanting. Then usually it's always the same, only they change a couple of things. So they have this temple opening chanting, then the Heart Sutra, which is really at the core of that. Then the other 2 mantras that were always there were the Light Mantra and the Kōbō Daishi mantra. And then they will change it. If it was a Fudo-myo, a temple, they will chant the Fudo-myo mantra. If it was a canon, it was a canon mantra. In some of the temples, I also heard the Medicine Buddha mantra that was The last temple I was there was also the Medicine Buddha mantra. Even though I think probably they had his statue there, but even though it was mostly a canon. So they will chant all of that, but that all you can check a little bit of that in the PDF I'm attaching in the notes. Again, these people chant this for years. So I'm pasting that for your curiosity and also in case you want to research more or one day do this for your own practice or just see perhaps what's the Heart Sutra, what can I learn about it, and see how it inspires my Reiki practice. I will always say with much respect, this is a spiritual practice that is very sacred and not to take those chanting very lightly. They chant it in a very particular way. You may be able to find it in YouTube, but I don't know. I will try to go to a Shingon service if you're interested in learning how to chant that. I will also practice it for years before ever daring to chant or to teach anyone else how to touch that. Practice at least a lot. So these people have been practicing a lot. So just treat all of that information about the temple practice, with great respect. I was very surprised it's available in English and all of that, but they do want people to come up and to discover the culture, to discover the spiritual practice. So it's widely available, and that's why I'm also sharing here. I think for me, the Heart Sutra, I've been studying it for years. It's brought a lot of joy in my life, but also understanding again these roots, because the Heart Sutra is is also in Zen. So Mikao Sui was very familiar with that and probably chanted ad nauseum. Really makes us understand where our Reiki practice comes from and gives us deep insights. So more than a religious journey is really about cultural experience. So part that they encourage you to walk part of it, or in our case, staying local and taking local buses, is that most of the beautiful learnings come from interacting with the community. The community that is also traveling and doing that. You see how they chant, how they pray, but also interacting with the people in the local restaurants, at the hotels, the bus drivers. The whole Japanese island of Shikoku is just incredible. It's probably where you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn how to do misagi, which is cleansing at the entrance of the temple with water, and the movement of left, right, left, which is also in the PDF I'm putting you in the temple practice, will remind you of the dry bathing. But just having people being so present and kind and helping you all the time. I think in a society that is becoming more divided and scared, and where there is so much distrust because people are like, there is fake news. It just literally takes you back to like, okay, this is a society where this is what can be when we leave the I a little bit aside and we move into more of a collective. It was deeply moving to see how they cook with such love. They serve you with so much love. They are so happy when you enjoy the food and tell them. When you go to the local baths and experience a completely different understanding of what, honestly, because the baths there, when you go to the public baths, everybody's naked. There is no bathing suits. Obviously, females on one side and males on the other side. And again, these are like very conservative, older parts of Japan. So it's literally like women and men on one side and the other. But it's beautiful because you discover that it's about your body. It's about cleansing. There is no comparison. There is no other dimension than being present with your body, taking care of your body, being clean, taking the hot water to feel better, to relax, being in a community, feeling safe in a community. And for me, being safe, being naked with 20 people in a space was something I experimented sort of 6 years ago, but this time I deeply experimented, was something very new, very beautiful, like safe. And I'm not talking about from violence or abuse where women, but safe from judgment, safe from everything, safe from taking your body in any way that is not this beautiful physical space where your soul can have this amazing experience. Was incredibly moving. So this is why you really do all this pilgrimage and you have to walk and go from temples. The temples are an amazing experience. In each temple, You're also supposed to leave what they call a bono behind, which is an affliction. But really, the whole experience of walking, and sometimes when you're going up with 25 pounds, which is around 13, 14 kilos, up a mountain that is steep, like going through the roots of a tree up and, a bunch of rocks. It's hard. You suffer a little bit, but there is such a gusto of also doing things that you don't think you could do. At least I just turned 53, so I never thought I could go up a mountain with 25 pounds on me of a backpack. I've never done it. I'm a person who actually is a rider, and even though I do martial arts, I'm not a person who's that physical in that sense. So it's really an incredible experience beyond going to every temple and traditionally leaving all of those affection behind and doing one prayer at the temple. So it was a very moving experience. If, again, I want to do El Camino next, I think this is not really about Shingon or about, Christianity or about any other religion. It's really about the experience of doing something like that and taking also time off the grid. I didn't post. I was fairly disconnected from everything. In some of these places, there is very little signal. In one of the temple up a mountain, we barely could get the Google map. Actually, we couldn't. We had to start going down, and then we found signal just for that. So it was also very refreshing for that. So then the last thing I want to add, and it's also that when we talk about these 88 bono or afflictions, they're originally 108, but because there are 88 temples, they came with a math that these 88 are actually the main ones, and then the other 20 are, I don't know. It's a weird math I didn't understand very well. But I pasted here on this slide so you can take a screen grab and read a little bit better. But these 88 bono are not a list of sins. These affliction like anger or like impatience or like lack of focus, they're not a sin. It's not like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that or you feel that. They're calling them 88 ways of forgetting our own light. And this for me, and this is where I'm ending this episode today, this for me is such a beautiful way of seeing the work we do in Reiki, right? A lot of times it's like, oh, anger, bad vibes. And I'm why I feel so guilty. I'm angry. I feel so guilty. I've been practicing Reiki and I'm worried. No, you just forgot your light for a little bit. Or I have shame. I have this. I have that. Yes, it's okay. You forgot your light. The light is still there. I just found it very, very, very beautiful. So these are the words I close this episode. I'm gonna have 3 more episodes. One about cleansing. I'm going to go a little bit through the temples and mention that. I may also explain to you what an onsen is and talk a little bit more about that experience. I was talking about the public baths. And also even of the food, of all the process, all the cleansing. And of course, that I mentioned about the misogi, the purification with water before entering the temple. That is really the inspiration for or dry bathing, and it's across many Buddhist temples, not just Shingon. The second one will be community. I'm going to go a little bit deeper in that experience of community and how it was really transformative, as well as some of the rituals in which I experienced that community. So I'm going to talk about the different angles, either for food, transportation, walking, chatting with pilgrims, but also when it comes to prayers. And then the last one is joy. And again, I never expected to find joy after morning prayers with some monks in one of the biggest temples and the most, really important temples of that area. So people, a lot of laughter everywhere. So, but also a lot of laughter rooted in compassion, in being centered, in being embodied. So it's not just like shallow laughter. It's really a loving, illuminating laughter and joy that I will be talking about. So thank you so much. I will be posting these whenever I have time for the episodes. So hopefully you will enjoy them. And as usual, please reach out if you have any questions or if there is any area that you would love for me to go over with more specificity about Shikoku and these temples after every episode. Thank you so much. Besos!